We are doing this again. Senate Republicans have decided that they're going to take one more, I don't want to call it one last, one more crack at Obamacare. This time they're going after the most objectionable and least popular provision in it, the death panel. No, not the death panel. The individual mandate. So the individual mandate is this idea that if you can afford to buy health insurance and you don't do it, then you get fined by the IRS at the end of the year, which John Roberts, right over here in this chamber, declared as actually a tax, which makes it constitutional. And because it was declared a tax, they're able to stick it into reconciliation. Now, it is unpopular for quite obvious reasons. It is a law that forces you to purchase a crappy product from another private company. Nobody wants to do that. But if you're going to have this system, I understand that in order to keep premiums down, you need to have an individual mandate. Otherwise, healthy people will avoid getting health insurance, and then when they get sick, then they get coverage. And because you are covered for pre-existing conditions, no insurer can turn you away. Then there really isn't much of an incentive to get covered. That's the economic kind of argument around it. I think most people would get coverage anyway, because it just makes you feel better to have affordable health insurance. You don't want to get whacked. But the CBO has estimated something like 13 or to 15 million people would go uninsured if you strip this individual mandate out, and you would see a significant rise in premiums. And so Republicans have decided that they're going to tuck this into their tax cut plan. Now, how are they going to get this tax cut plan done? Well, they have a very clever move. In the Energy and Natural Resources Committee, which is chaired by Lisa Murkowski, they passed a bill saying that you can now drill in the Alaska National Wildlife Refuge. Now, ANWR was a huge priority of Murkowski's father, Frank Murkowski, who was a lion of Alaskan politics, and Lisa Murkowski, who was the kind of the hero of the resistance for casting a deciding vote against repealing Obamacare earlier. Now has within her reach what she and her father have both been gunning for their entire lives, which is opening up ANWR to drilling. And so what they're going to do is attach this ANWR provision to the tax cuts and to the repeal of the individual mandate in order to tell Murkowski, well, you might not necessarily like gutting Obamacare, you might not like these corporate tax cuts even, but you really do want to drill an ANWR, don't you? And if you get Murkowski along, then Republicans can lose Susan Collins, they can lose Ron Johnson or Corker or Flake or McCain. They can only lose two. But if they haven't lost Murkowski off the bat, then they're in much better shape to pass this. And I said during the entire debate over full Obamacare repeal and replace that there was no way they were going to get the votes for it. That proved true. And I'm saying this time that I do see a path for them to get this complete package through.
Ryan, they're still wrapping their heads around this, but I have a question. It's from your newsletter, which I recommend that you guys all subscribe to.
It's Action Network is the one that hosts it, so you can just Google my name and newsletter.
Two things. You referenced the Alabama special election as being relevant here, and basically what the calculus is for the folks of Alabama, but also you sort of expressed some frustration that neither Murkowski or Collins will just kind of put us out of our misery and let us know. And okay, so yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Well, so in Alabama, the special election is December 12th. Roy Moore is known now to be a child molester. Doug Jones is known now publicly to be a Democrat. And as Eric and I were talking about, it's unclear in Alabama, which label is more damaging to you politically in an election there. We're going to find this out. So they need to hurry up and get these tax cuts pushed through if they want to get them through, because Roy Moore is a complete wild card. If he's elected and they're in the process of expelling him, is he necessarily going to go along with what Mitch McConnell wants? Maybe, maybe not. He's not a sure vote like Luther Strange is currently. Doug Jones is a sure vote no. So if he comes in, then you've got Collins and Doug Jones. And then any one of McCain or Flake or Corker upends this. And yeah, the other thing we're talking about is that here we are talking about Lisa Murkowski and Susan Collins again. and they're gonna drive us into our graves.
Do you think they really haven't made up their minds?
I think Susan Collins is against it. So I talked to her today, and she said it very much complicates it to include, repealing a single provision of Obamacare as part of taxes. I haven't decided how I'm going to vote yet. That's kind of how she talks when she's very strongly leaning against something. Murkowski, when I asked her today about it, she immediately pivoted to Anwar. All I'm thinking about this week is Anwar. Well, if all you're thinking about is Anwar, then there's a good chance you're going to vote for, whatever package Anwar is included in.
So Brody Walker, you just mentioned Arizona Senators McCain and Flake, said that he's going to be calling both of them, and he asks people who are in Alaska to contact Murkowski. I mean, how much influence do you think that the constituents of these senators might have?
A ton. Like in general, constituents have a ton of influence over their senators and their representatives. They very much do care what people back home think, and that even applies for people who are leaving office. Believe it or not, it's kind of more of a moral impact. And now, John McCain, because of his fatal diagnosis of cancer, is going to be leaving office and not running for re-election. And Jeff Flake is also not running for re-election. So neither of them are going to kind of face voters at another election, but they definitely care what people think about them. That's why they are politicians in the first place.
Okay, so I apologize, female viewer who had a great question. I couldn't find it just now. But basically she's saying she's so sick and tired of these dirty tricks. Is this a dirty trick, the sort of trading, the drilling in the Arctic? Is it a dirty trick, or is it just the way that Congress does business?
Could be both, right? This is how legislation has always been passed. The 1820 compromise, the 1850 compromise, the 1957 Civil Rights Act that LBJ got passed through Congress required building a dam for senators in the Northwest. What does building a dam for senators in the Northwest have to do with passing a Civil Rights Act? Well, getting the votes to pass the act. So the general idea when you have a regional representational system like this is that this is how you often get things done. It's slightly less skeezy than it used to be, where earmarks would be the things that would buy people off.
What threatens this Republican coalition more? Is it this new addition that it's going to repeal the individual mandate and whatever impact, you can tell us what impact that would have on people's health insurance? Or is it all the stuff that we already knew before about how this is going to increase taxes on people who aren't doing that well in order to give tax breaks to people who are doing incredibly well?
I think it's a little bit of both. I mean, I think because a lot of the people that they're going to hurt are in the upper middle class or Republicans. They might give a little bit less. They might be less motivated to volunteer or show up for an election. I think the getting rid of the individual mandate will wind up being politically disastrous for Republicans. Not only last week did you see them almost lose the Virginia House of Delegates, but last night in Oklahoma, the 4th Republican district flipped to a Democratic district. This was a 40-point swing. This is a seat that Trump had carried by 38 or so points back in November, and a Democrat eked out a victory last night. This is in rural Oklahoma, outside of Tulsa. So now you're going to take ownership of the healthcare system by repealing the individual mandate. You're going to see premiums go up, and you're going to see the announcements of those premiums go up in October of 2018 when people are already pissed off. So I think this for them would be a really politically stupid move.